Okay, welcome. I'm Dr. Stando, professor from the government department, and I'll be moderating this panel event. And so I really want to thank you all for coming here. This is going to be a very important event, and I think historic event. This event is made possible by the Center on Race, Immigration, and Social Justice. You're probably asking, what is that? I'll explain that in a few seconds, but I want to thank my colleagues, Dr. Manuel Barajas, as well as Dr. Andrea Moore, for getting this thing together for us. So let's give them a hand, please. I also want to thank the government department, also ethnic studies, and the graduate program of the sociology department for being sponsors. Let's give them a hand as well. All right. So this event is being put on by the Center on Race, Immigration, and Social Justice. And you're probably wondering, well, who are those folks? Well, we are the new kid on the block here. And myself and Dr. Barajas, we worked very hard a few years ago to get this initiative started in our college, and then a number of colleagues in our departments in sociology and government, anthropology, ethnic studies, psychology, and probably missing a few others here. We all got together and met over a year to try and shape together a center that was going to focus in on issues of race, immigration, and social justice. Issues that are right there at the top of the list of issues that we have to deal with here in this country. And we figured that there's a need to have a focus on that for students, so you all can do research, so you all can also do mentorships, and so we have a great deal of opportunities for students to really expand your horizons around the issues that we'll be talking about today and issues that we're going to be talking about in the futures. So there's a sign-up list going around, and we're at the front desk, and we'd love to have you sign it so we can stay in touch with you. So for any follow-up for this event, but also for events coming in the future. We are seeking funding from the university to fund the center, and hopefully we can have this thing running by the fall. We may need some student support to help us fight for the funding. So I'm just kind of putting that out there right now because that's how you get things happening. But we definitely want to have the center going. In fact, we have an announcement out for a director for the center. So hopefully we'll get that happening. And also, could the task force members who are here, could you stand up, please? All right, let's give them a hand. Yes. Today we're dealing with a critical issue of policing, and it's critical in all of the communities that I'm sure that you all live in. It's critical here on this campus. Not that we have bad policing on this campus, but there are issues that come up here on this campus that also need to be dealt with. But here in Sacramento, we have some issues. So today we have fantastic panelists who are going to talk about issues that are going on in their communities. Before I introduce our guests, let me just say a couple of things about what's going on here in Sacramento around policing. Just recently, on April 11th, a young man was walking in his neighborhood and crossed the street where he thought was legal for him to cross the street. The next thing he knew, he was being accosted by a Sacramento police officer who questioned him, and then he was later pummeled and knocked to the ground, hit 18 times, suffered a concussion, and was arrested for walking in his neighborhood. This was assault and battery by it was state-sponsored assault and battery. That's what it was. And because this individual was African American, I don't know if he had a suit on or something that made a difference. He had dreads, but he was a brother walking down the street, crossing the street like we all do from time to time, where there's not a crosswalk, where it's safe to do it, we do it. But this police officer, who is kind of symptomatic of the police culture here in Sacramento, decided to assault this young man. And in the same neighborhood, a few months earlier, an African-American individual was shot and killed by a police officer because he was running away from them, he didn't know why they were chasing him, and then they shot him and killed him. These are incidents that happen in the African-American community all the time. It happens in the Latino community all the time. It happens in poor communities all the time. So we're here to investigate, to examine that. And so we have some excellent people here to talk about that. Also, let me say that today in the newspaper in Sacramento Bee, there was an article about racial profiling here in Sacramento, and the statistics are horrible. About 13% of the city's driving age population is black in Sacramento, but 32% of Sacramento police traffic stops involve black drivers. Overall, police stop the equivalent of 1 out of every 4 black adults annually. By comparison, the city police stop the equivalent of 1 out of every 17 adults annually. And Sacramento, the analysis found a discrepancy in stops only affected black drivers. Other minorities were not stopped in unexpected numbers. So these stops turn into arrests. These arrests turn into people having to pay money for these arrests, going down to the jail. And then once it gets into the DA and the police are in the same ballpark. They're doing the same thing. They're doing the same kind of abuse. They're allowing these things to happen. So it's not just the police, it's the district attorney's office, it's law enforcement in general that is really tying together the hopes and dreams of black and brown people living in these communities. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to turn it over to our guest. And the first person I want to introduce is a dynamic speaker from Oakland. She is a co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project, which is a dynamic project in Oakland that's been dealing with the horrendous police abuses that have been in Oakland. Kat Brooks has been on the forefront. I consider her a Latter-day Panther because she has the charisma, she has the spirit, she has the intelligence to articulate what is going on in the community, and I believe that she will give us a great message on what's going on. So following Kat, it will be Sonia Lewis, who comes from the Black Lives Matter movement here in Sacramento. Ms. Lewis was an educator high school. She's from Burbank High School here in Sacramento. She went to Spelman. She is now a board member with Black Lives Matter, so she has a lot to talk about, some of the statistics I'm probably sure that I was talking about. We have another speaker who's not here. That's Councilman Alan Warren. He's on his way coming here. So if Alan comes here, I'll have him go third. And then we're going to have Mr. Eddie Salas speak. Eddie's been working against the police actions in the Latino community, around the gang injunctions, around trying to get youth involved. Eddie is a graduate, master's degree graduate in ethnic studies. We got to give him a hand for that, all right? So we have graduates from Sac State here, community leaders, community people here, so we should have a great time. So our speakers are going to speak for about 15, 20 minutes each, and then afterwards we have time for questions. So please hang out and get it. All right. Thank you very much, Kat. You're on.
No pressure. No pressure. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hopefully y'all let this go not do. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Out there, right? My name is Kat Brooks. I am the co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project. I would like to begin, actually, with a moment of silence for all of those who have lost their lives to state violence. by state violence, I mean through local law enforcement, I mean through ICE, I mean through incarceration, I mean through being denied health care, food, and all of the things we know that our people, Black, brown, indigenous folks, are systematically and intentionally denied to prevent them from living full productive lives. And by the state, so there's no confusion, I mean the United States of America and all of its institutions from the White House all the way to the city halls that are across this country. I'm a mother, I'm an actress, I'm a freedom fighter. I've been in the movement for going on 2 decades. We'll stop saying that soon. I'm dating myself. I grew up in a radically political family. My father was the first Black stagehand in Las Vegas, Nevada. My mother was a pioneer of the domestic violence movement. And I grew up understanding, as Alice Walker says, that activism is my rent for being on this planet. Right? And for a while that played out in a bunch of different ways. I worked on issues around land use. I worked on issues around education reform. I did some stuff on policing. You can't be Black or brown or indigenous in this country and not do work on issues around policing. But I was sort of, trying to fight as best I could on all of the fronts in that a war on Black bodies is being waged. And then I was coming home from a trip to Vegas, where I was born and raised in Oakland, and I had just gotten back. And I was driving on the street, I was about to turn the corner, and this brother said, excuse me, sister, do you know where the rally is at? Do I need this? They're recording, so I will use it. Thank you, sister. Do you know where the rally's at? And I said, what rally? And he said, the rally for that brother that they killed. And I said, well, who? I don't know anything about it. I just got home. He said, Oscar Grant. And I have to ask this question because it's been 9 years, right? And some of you were 8 when that happened. So I just want to get a show of hands of who knows who Oscar Grant is. Okay. There's enough hands not raised that I'm gonna tell that story. So Oscar Grant had gone over to San Francisco to celebrate New Year's Eve. This is January 1st, 2009. And his mother, Mama Wanda Johnson, had asked him to take the BART train because she said he would be safer. On the way home that night, something happened on the train. There was some sort of scuffle among some folks. The BART police officers were called. They arrived within minutes to Fruitvale Station. Oscar and his friends were dragged from the train within minutes. Oscar Grant was called a bitch-ass nigga. He was slammed on the ground, he was handcuffed, and he was shot in the back. What was different about Oscar than many of the other murders that had happened that year was that on that train track, there were lots and lots of people. It wasn't just one person with a camera. It was everybody in the Bay cop watches, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But everybody turned on their cell phones and watched Oscar's execution happen. And then they went and took to social media, and his murder went viral. And I went home, and I looked up his name, and the video popped up. And I watched that video again and again and again. I literally could not stop watching it. I got sick, literally physically ill. I couldn't stop screaming. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't function. Not that this was the first Black man that I had seen or known to be murdered by police, and I was clear that he wouldn't be the last, but there was something about the brutality and the viciousness and the ugliness of it, and the public spectacle that the last moments of his life were, that did for me. I say that's my enough button got pushed, right? I had had enough. I had had enough of hearing the stories. I had had enough of state terror. I had had enough. And so since that moment, literally, the vast majority of my unpaid work has been to combat state terror. Why do I call it state terror? I pulled this from my comrade, Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., who is the son of the Black Panther Party leader, Chairman Fred Hampton, who was murdered, assassinated by the United States government while Fred was still in his mother's belly. But he talks about the need to speak in real terms so we can get real resistance, right? That if we water down the terms for the people, then we water down the people's will to resist. So we don't call it gentrification, we call it land grabs. We don't call them prisons, we call it concentration camps. We don't call it police violence, we call it police terror. The definition of terrorism is to use violence to impose your political will. I'm gonna let you sit with that for a minute. The definition of the word terror is to use violence to impose your political will, and the job of the police department is to impose the political will of the United States of America and the local governmental municipalities. And they do that by any means necessary. I also call it terror because when the police kill us is not the only time that we experience this terror, right? That's actually the most extreme level of violence that we can experience is when they gun us down in our communities. The truth is that in Black and Brown and indigenous communities, which are occupied communities by a militarized police force, we are terrorized every day, right? That's from being beaten, from being racially profiled, to the D-boys on the corner that they rob, to the women that are sexually assaulted and raped, right? Holtzclaw was not the first officer to rape Black and brown women, right? He's not an abnormality. That is the norm. That is actually the primary way that Black and brown and indigenous women experience violence at the hand of law enforcement. And it's even just when you get pulled over. So I want you to think about that, right? You can have all your L's straight, everything can be fine and good, and you know that you're within the law to be on the road. The second those red and blue lights flash behind you, if you are a person of color, your heart starts to race, your palms start to sweat, your stomach starts to out up, and you are so clear that your failure to signal, say her name's Slumber Bland, can result in your funeral. That is terrorism. In response to Oscar Grant, I co-founded an organization called the Honest Organizing Committee. We're a Black liberation organization, and again, we were trying to struggle on the many fronts in which war is being waged on Black lives, but because the Oakland Police Department, many of you might know, is notorious for its violence against Black bodies, the Oakland Police Department has been under federal receivership for 14 years, going on 15 years. They were supposed to be off in 2. So that just gives you an example of how impossible they found it to get their whole entire lives together, right? So we were in the streets constantly. We were protesting nonstop within 24, 48 hours, and we were both responding to what was happening in Oakland, but we were also responding to what was happening across the country. So we're constantly in the streets, 24, 48 hours, we could have thousands of people in the streets, right? Yay for us. People were still dying. And so we started having conversations that if we are about the liberation of our people and we are really about getting the boot of white supremacy off the backs of our people, what are we actually doing that is pushing that down the road? And so that spurred a few conversations, right? One was, why do we continue to let the state set the terms of struggle? Meaning that we only move when they move, right? They kill us, we're in the streets. Again, back to, that this terrorism happens in our communities every day. It also spurred a conversation about, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, that we're clear that policing can't be reformed, and I'll talk about why. So what are we building that is going to actually keep our people safe, right? And the third conversation that it forced was, what happens to families, right? So when your loved one is murdered by law enforcement, there's no nice detective that knocks on your door and says, excuse me, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, or Mrs. and Mrs. and so-and-so. You know, Jackie was just gunned down by the police department. But don't worry, we're gonna do everything in our power to ensure you get justice. There will be justice for your child. That is not the conversation that happens to families whose loved ones are stolen by state violence. The conversation that happens when the conversation happens, because let me be clear, oftentimes I know the name of the person laying in the middle of the street before the family does. When that conversation happens with them, they are interrogated, they are treated like it's their fault, and if they show any inkling that they have any intention of resisting or making any noise or talking to us for that matter, they are targeted. Cops sit outside their homes, they show up at their jobs, they call them, and the terror just continues. So we want, and then, top all it off, very well-meaning activists like myself and the folks sitting up here would slap their baby's face on a banner and take to the streets without ever having had a conversation with their family. Well-meaning, our intentions were good, but Mama Wanda, Oscar's mother, never intended for her child to become the face of resistance against police terror. And he was so much the face of resistance against police terror that was the time Arab Spring was happening, right? The Egyptian Revolution. They had signs in Egypt that said, I am Oscar Grant. Wanda hadn't even talked to the media really yet, right? And so we wanted to create a support system for families, because the other thing is that for a lot of us, it's just a blip in the news. Oh, somebody else got killed by the police. Because even in this age of Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black Lives, we have normalized the killing of our families. And I don't just say babies, I say families. I think it's very important to understand that the state is murdering the old, the young, the straight, the queer, right? The differently abled, everybody is a target. But for the families, it's not just a blip in the news. This struggle is a protracted struggle. So in the case of Oscar Grant, for example, that was a 3-year protracted struggle with the state till we got, and this is still a debate among a lot of us, some semblance of justice. So Johannes Messerly, who was the bar officer, the then bar officer who murdered Oscar Grant, was found guilty. He was found guilty, she said, she laughing already because she knows what I'm about to say. He was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. I want to sit with that for a minute. I told you that within minutes, Oscar had been called a bitch-ass nigga, punched in the face, slammed on the ground, handcuffed, and shot in the back. And this officer was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, meaning that he did not intend to pull his gun out and shoot him. And Messerly's defense was he thought it was his taser. See, and this is when black people get mad, right? Because you start to talk to us like we're children and we're stupid, right? So I happen to know that officers are repeatedly trained, right, to know what sits on what side of their body. The gun is on one side, the taser is on the other side. The other thing I know, because I shoot guns, is that it's a process for which to remove your firearm, to get the bullet into the chamber, and pull the trigger, right? He had to go through a process to do that. But the courts and that jury looked at the family of that dead boy and told them that he didn't mean to do it. He did 3 months and he was out. So, APTP was born. Our mission is to build a replicable and sustainable model for rapidly responding to and eradicating police terror in communities of color. What that looks like. We are Black-led. We've got a Black coordinating committee, but we're multiracial and multi-generational. We work in committee. We work in committee because not many people do this work for pay. In fact, I don't know anybody that does this work for pay. I say, I've got my 9 to 5 and I've got my 5 to 9, right? Maybe TV is my 5 to 9, and I wish it was just 4 hours a day because that's not what it looks like. But we work in the committee. We've got an action committee, we've got a legal committee, we've got a security committee, a media committee, a policy committee, and a first responders committee. Our first responders committee is our most established committee. That means exactly what it says. As soon as the police murder someone, we go to the scene with a team. Ideally, that team has people that are informed that are trained in trauma-informed investigating. It ideally is comprised of someone that looks or speaks the language of the community that they're in. We send a medic out, right, and a legal person. And they go out and they talk to witnesses. Sometimes the police leave behind evidence. We pick that up. We take pictures, we identify community leaders, we identify the family, we begin the process of taking the families through what is about to be the most horrific time period of their lives. Police and policing. Who were the first police officers? Anybody? Not up here, but anybody out there? Yes, sir.
Slave patrols?
They were slave patrols. Policing in America was born of slave patrols. And that's important because their job then was to hunt, catch, incarcerate, and or kill niggas, right? Overseer officer, KRS-One. They are still hunting, catching, killing, and incarcerating niggas. Nothing has changed. And that's part of why I say we can't reform our way out of this system. We cannot fix this system. The system is not broken. It's not like policing was born, created, and it was going along well and working equally for everybody to keep everybody equally safe, right? And then something went horribly awry. And now we're about the business of trying to get back to where we were. No, it has never worked for Black people, for brown people, for indigenous people. I want to say a couple of people's names. Normally this is a PowerPoint and you will see people's names. I want to talk about Yvette Henderson. She was murdered on the West Oakland-Emeryville border in February 2015. Yvette Henderson was a 38-year-old grandmother and mother. She had gone into Home Depot. The Home Depot security accused her of stealing a set of knives. Something happened. The security guard attacked Yvette, injured her to the point that an ambulance was called. Discombobulated and terrified, she ran from the Home Depot. Security guard then picked up the phone and called the police, and we say hunted her for the police officers, watching the camera and letting the police officers know exactly where she was going. Yvette ran down the street. The police showed up. She was at a brand new self-storage spot just a couple of blocks away. Within 7 seconds of the police arriving, Yvette Henderson was gunned down in broad daylight with an AR-15. An AR-15 is a military-grade assault rifle. Why are local law enforcement patrolling our communities in the middle of the day with military-grade assault rifles? Even if Yvette Henderson did steal those knives. Last time I checked, the punishment for shoplifting in the United States was not execution. Mario Woods. Mario Woods was murdered in December of 2015. He was shot over 20 times in broad daylight for holding a knife. A butter knife. He was known to police. They knew that he was living with mental health issues. Richard Perkins was murdered in November of 2015. Richard Perkins' story gets me. We work very closely with his family. Oakland has sideshows. I don't know if SAC has sideshows, but we used to. They still get about it down there. So there was a sideshow that had happened. And Richard was at a gas station, half of a block away from his house. The sideshow happened, the cops came, and the sideshow had actually gotten cleared. Richard Perkins had a toy gun. Richard Perkins was in the process of showing the police that it was a toy gun. And this is what gets me about this, is that he was clear that that toy gun could literally mean the end of his life. So he tried to take proactive steps to let the police officers know, hey, I've got this toy gun. He was gunned down. The part that is even more disturbing about this story is that his mother, Mama Ada Perkins, was walking back to her house from the day of shopping, saw the body on the ground covered with the sheet. And she stood there and she prayed for the family of that child. It took them 72 hours to notify Ms. Perkins that her baby was dead. Again, that was one of the instances. I knew his name before she did. Osmar Efiano Gonzalez Garba, March 2017, was a Nicaraguan immigrant found hanging in his cell in the Southern California ICE Detention Center. And part of why I bring that up is because we have to be having a conversation right now about expanding our definitions of policing, right? So we've got a new dude in the White House, right? This orange guy. And I want to be clear that he is new, but what America is doing is not new. My comrade Terha Ak says that America has two phases, smash and grab and smooth and soothe, right? Obama was smooth and soothe. Obama was a reporter in chief, but he did it with a smile on his face, right? Felons, not families, right? Trump is being very blatant about what he's doing, right? First day in the White House, on the White House website, the National Endowment for the Arts page came down, a couple other progressive pages that came down. What went up was support for our law enforcement officers, right? And that their job is not to protect the riot or the looter, and be clear for any of you who do sit-ins or marches or whatever they're talking about, whether you break windows or not, right? A war on dissent has started. The police unions were his biggest backers, right? And his job is to restore the confidence of law enforcement. And how we've seen that reflected in the streets is the sheer brutality with which law enforcement agencies are moving through our communities, right? ICE officers have said they feel like finally their hands have been untied, right? The night after Trump's election, we had massive protests in Oakland. We had 3 days of protests. I had not seen the Oakland Police Department be that brutal since the days of Occupy Oakland. And the days of Occupy Oakland cost the taxpayers of the city of Oakland thousands and thousands of dollars because of the level of brutality exercised on people that were engaging in peaceful protests. You might have heard of Scott Olson. He was a vet that got hit in the head with a canister from what do you call it? Smoke bomb. Tear gas. Yeah, canister. So no restraint. We've got Jeff Sessions in the White House. We've got, like I said, emboldened police departments. And so we've got to be expanding the definition of policing so we can build stronger solidarity between our movements, right? So the fight against OPD is the fight against ICE, is the fight against the Sheriff's Department, is the fight against the FBI, because they're coming for us on all of these fronts. A couple of stats for you. 5 minutes, okay. I want to say this. I want to say that the last time I did this presentation, which was just a little over 2 weeks ago, according to killedbypolice.net, the number of people murdered by law enforcement in this country was 274. Jordan Edwards was murdered in Texas, made it 389. 274 to 389 in a matter of weeks. 50 of those deaths have been in California. I want to talk really quickly about the ways in which we resist, so I'm going to skip, right? So there's lots of ways we resist, right? So we're not just taking this line down, right? We shut it down. I'm one of the Black Friday 14, we shut down the West Oakland BART station on Black Friday to interrupt business as usual. We get a lot of flack for that, right? People say, why are you doing that? People are being inconvenienced. Listen, as long as it is the business of this country to have black bodies bleeding in its streets, it'll be our business to shut that down and force that conversation, right? We've got marches and rallies. Those are not the be all and end all, but they're important because they keep it in the news. They provide places for people to get engaged, but that has to be followed up with serious organizing, building something different. I said with APTP, one of the things we want to do is build something different. We're building small replicable models of community safety teams. We've got one in the Laurel right now where we've built relationships with business owners, right? So they don't, and with the community. They don't call the police when something goes down. They call Urban Shore Security Services, not to be confused with the Urban Shore Security. Now I'm rushing. I said we've got our first responders, the Laurel Community Security Project, practicing restorative justice, right? So when there's intercommunal violence or we've got domestic issues, what does it look like to have a team of elders and professionals from our community that we can call and engage as opposed to inviting law enforcement into our communities? And the other thing that we're doing are 21st century survival programs, right? So one of the things that the Panthers knew, and among many things that they knew and they got right, was that it's very hard to struggle for liberation when you can't pay your light bill. It's very hard to struggle for liberation if you're hungry. It's very hard to struggle for liberation if you're ill, right? So we started 21st century survival programs in deep East Oakland. We're bringing medical supplies and we're using this opportunity to then politically educate people and get them involved. There have been some victories. As a result of our people's investigations, we forced the Oakland Police Department to alter how they respond to officer-involved shootings. They used to refuse to show tapes to family. Now they want to do it before we can even make the demand, right? It's not enough, but it's good because it means that we're pushing them. They rush to show the weapon. They're having rapid press conferences. They're responding, they're attempting to respond faster than we can. And as a combination between our work and the radical reforms that we've helped support to be implemented, the Oakland Police Department hasn't murdered anybody since November 2015. If you know anything about OPD, that is a miracle. And it is because of a mass-based movement in Oakland that says, we will come for you when you come for our people.
Thank you. I'm Sonia Lewis. I am with the Sacramento chapter of Black Lives Matter, and I thank you, Kat, because that was, take it in for a moment. On a personal note, and I want to give the example of a personal note, because sometimes in our minds we say we're doing all the right things, right? So my mother is a migrant. She immigrated from Chicago, Illinois in the late 60s. My father came to California in the mid 60s from Texas. Father went off into the military when he was 16. He lied on to get into the military to get out of 1 year of high school. Came back with the story of, we are here for you. Became a police officer with the Richmond Police Department in the Bay Area. So I'm a native of the Bay Area. And that's important because as I grew up, the image that I saw was a dichotomy. I saw a police officer on one hand who I looked up to as my father in blue, who is, you've been licensed to protect and serve, right? My mother, on the other hand, I said she was from Chicago, so she grew up, and some of you, I'm gonna date myself, and some of you might not know of a show back in the 60s and 70s called Good Times. Yeah. She grew up in Cabrini Green projects. And so that terror was like, how could I have married a man who is now a police officer? Okay? She became an, I say quasi-volunteer member of the Black Panther Party in the 70s. So I grew up in a home where I had this pull, this tug of war, you know, within me. So I got a rich, you know, identity it was popping. I was beautiful. Black is beautiful. Black is the bomb, you know, kind of home environment. And I can be and do anything. Out reading everyone in my kindergarten class when I went into the educational system. Challenging educators when I was in the education system. 7 years old, I told a teacher by the name of Miss Bill at Woodrow Wilson Elementary School that I will not say the Pledge of Allegiance. 7 years old. I didn't know why in the big scheme of things, but I knew that the words just didn't make sense to me. 7 years old. My grandmother used to call me an old soul, so I wear that, and I say, okay, you know, it is what it is. Watching the, you know, back and forth, hearing stories now that my dad tells of being a police officer with the Richmond Police Department. They had the Richmond Knights of Terror, who would terrorize these black men and women who took these positions. It was the giveaway, right? This was the time of affirmative action. So black folks could come back from the military and get a job, do what, you know, get that good life, buy a house, you know, live that life with that white picket fence and be okay and not have to worry about the terror that's outside of your home. And so I remember him telling, you know, stories to us that on the job he would be asked, go in, spy on the Black Panthers, and he had this tug of war in his heart because he knew his wife was going to these Black Panther meetings, so how do I go and tell him on this? But what he found was the truth, community organizing, community protecting community. And so he didn't have anything to report that was worthwhile, so his job became a target. His position became a target. And so he would come out to his police cruiser quite often and it would be hit. And you get so many demerits and then you're fired, right? And so that was his experience. Shining, you know, star in the community, had gone and served the military for this country, come home and he got the job and he was fired from the job, right? So then, of course, people become disgruntled, right? You have to look at, why did this happen to me? You know, I did everything they said to do. You know, I graduated high school. I got married. I got a job. I went and served our country. I did everything that they said to do. So that was kind of ingrained in me from a young age, but I still had this, you know, rebellious spirit where I would challenge folks. Not intentionally and not in a disrespectful way, but I wanted an answer. You know, I can remember being in high school as we transitioned to moving here to Sacramento, and I said, this is the worst place on earth. God, this is hell because it's so hot, right? Coming from the Bay Area with no transportation on the every 5 to 10. You know, in Oakland, I was able to ride the bus number 40 from North Oakland to Eastmont Mall on a Saturday morning, have my fun, get back home before my parents. I moved to Sacramento and it was, oh my God, the 81 comes every hour. Are you kidding me? So that's, you know, we're told and we're sold a dream, right? Do the right thing. My mom moved us here to pursue an education here at Sac State. She ended up graduating by the time I graduated high school. So my entire life, she was in college. My entire life up to age 18, she was in college, taking a class here and there to make sure that she fulfilled her dream. But it was always the stories that lingered in the back of my mind when we would go back to the Bay Area and we'd hear about a family member who was harassed or terrorized by the police while being Black. Walking down the street, getting beat while being Black. Driving, getting beat, pull out your car while being Black. So those things stuck in my mind. If you know anything about this city, there are certain schools that have identities, and Luther Burbank had an identity of a negative identity. It was associated with and demonized for being a Crip school and blood. We were often called blood bank. That wasn't Burbank, it was blood bank, because the fights and the shootings and the killings, the black on black crime that we often hear about, rather than it being a problem that resulted from the bigger problem of systematic racism. I can remember a cop I did everything right. I did what my parents told me. I was scared to death of them and anything that they told me to do. I was a literal kid, so my mother said, you come home pregnant, you will be homeless. So I was that kind of kid, so I believed her. So I believed people in positions of authority to a certain extent. I can remember a cop at Hughes Stadium while at a football game, body slamming and twisting the arm of one of my former fellow cheerleaders. We're 16, 17 years old. And I was the only one saying, hey, you can't do that. Took his name down, gave it to my mother, and we followed up. Because that's just what we did. I can remember my senior year of high school being 18. I was accepted into 13 colleges and universities. Stanford, UCLA, NYC. My great-great-grandfather helped found the college, Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. So my mother said, you will go there. And it was a dream. So I had to look at one of my kind of admired instructors on campus who had helped get me into Stanford in his face and tell him, I'm not going to Stanford, I'm going to Spelman. He told me that I was guilty of reverse racism. Right? So think about that. These are the images and messages that do the right thing, you know, go to college, be all you can be, kind of messages that we're told. But at 18, my senior year of high school, there was a murder in the 29th Street apartments off of 29th and Florin Road, and they were looking for every car that was a big Cadillac style car, and we just happened to have a white Delta Oldsmobile. We were pulled over, my sister and I, and we were made to lie down in the middle of the street. So examples, right? This is a personal example of how do the police us, right? Skip ahead, so that's 1989. I go off to college, I'm becoming even more rebellious as my father, who is now a preacher at this time, right? Yeah, I have to take deep breaths sometimes. And I appreciate that foundation because I'm very faithful. I'm faithful to, my spirit and knowing who I am and knowing that I have value. And so no one can just pull something over on me. So I come back home to California and Rodney King happens. And that cracked me. My spirit, was cracked just a little bit, watching him beat over and over and over again. It wasn't my first time that I was in a movement of resistance, though. When I was at Spelman in Atlanta, every year the freshmen are told to commemorate MLK Day by doing a march through the city. And coming from California, you don't see KKK in the sense of the white sheets and the full garb, right? You hear about other things that are overt racism, implicit biases, things of that nature. But seeing the KKK with shotguns in their hands across the street from a group of college students who are commemorating the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was with civil disobedience, peaceful protester, right? The dichotomy again, right? You got this big pool. So come back to California again, and the Rodney King thing happened, and everyone is so upset, and it cracked me just a little bit. I was like, if this is the way it's going to be, I have to change some things about how I move. The acquittal came, and I said I have to do something. So I was a member of one of those individuals who stopped traffic on the Bay Bridge in 2002. It was important that I was able to release. So like Kat said, yeah, we protest, it's important. A march is important. That's relief, that's healing to my soul and to my spirit, right? I became a high school teacher. And I want to touch on this part just a little bit because this is the other part of policing that sometimes gets ignored in the educational system, where we begin to demonize children because of the color of their skin, because of the background that they come from, because of their economic status, and we start to demonize them. For little black boys, it starts at age 4 or 5, right? we want to tell them, oh, you can't do this. And I have to side note, I'm the mother of 6 black little boys, okay? And so I do this because of them, okay? So I've seen in the classroom where police come in, raids come in, looking for individuals. We have to think about those kind of things. How are we policing our communities and who's affected by it? So, you know, you have to think about that terror, you know, how does it affect us economically? How does it affect our health? Are we taking care of ourselves? Because that stress begins to build up. We feel that stress on a regular day-to-day basis. Housing and education. How are we able to move and do the right thing, right? And be successful with that. Thank you.
Next, we will have, we're full up here. Eddie, live.
Does that work?
Go right ahead. Yeah. Does that work up there?
I get tired of sitting down.
Is there
Well, anyway, so when I started this, good afternoon, I just want to, you know, and I have so I'm going to age myself. So in 24 days, I'll be 61 years old. 61 years old. I've been working with kids since 1976. I don't work with good kids. I've always worked with, they call them at risk, I call them underserved. But I want to establish 2 things first, and I'm going to talk about brown bodies. And so I want to talk, and I want to just say that brown bodies have been policed since European contact, which means that we are colonial subjects. It's not something that is really spoken about in the United States because we don't talk in those terms, okay? So I want to go, and I want to, because we're in Cali, and it's not about the cheese, but really it's about youth and young people. And so I want to start in 1850, and I want to move forward. I want to do a historical narrative because this is an institution of higher learning, and, you know, my background is, I'm from Southeast LA. My father is a farm worker. My grandfather was a farm worker more than 50 years. My mom is from East LA, went to schools in East LA, and both of my parents were activists. I grew up in an activist home as well. But the thing is that we're very much working class people. I come from working people. And so I'm not a high school graduate. I got kicked out of school 30 times in 3 years. And I'm not from Northern California. I'm a 13. I'm not a 14. And that really made a big difference in my life because I worked in California Youth Authority for 11 years. I worked in the juvenile justice system for now 20 years. I'm a practitioner of working with youth. That's I'm active in the community, but that's my life. I work with young people. I started working with young people in '76. So I want to just establish a couple of things too. The releasing of brown bodies in California began with the gold rush and the decimation of California natives. Really, we don't talk about that, but at numbers that are still to this day, there's genocide on native peoples. And I know that, and I respect for the Jews and all that, but we're still being, they're still practicing genocide on us. It has not ended. And so the gold rush, and then, and I fast forward to the 1920s and the first wave of immigration, and the brown body is again, it's really taken as who are these people? But of course, there's a correlation between labor and policing. There's that correlation. And so the brown body, is a farm laborer, and he and she take the place of the Chinese as the premier farm laborer in the state of California. And we have to understand that in California, agriculture is the basis of the 7th richest economy in the world, which is agriculture. Okay, agriculture permeates in Mexicans. We make America fat. Don't get it twisted. So then in the 1930s, so first we come, and then in the 1930s, they load 1.5 million Mexicans in railroad cars and send them back to Mexico. It's called repatriations. At the same time, there's a coordinating councils, mostly in Southern California and Central California and up in the Bay Area. They're made up of civic leaders and the police, and then we have what is commonly referred to as the Mexican problem. They're the coordinating councils. Okay, these are all the civic leaders, because Mexican youth have become a problem, and they need to be policed. Not only do they need to be policed, but their parents need to be policed, and because there was no civil rights, we are segregated in barrios. And East LA didn't become East LA because we wanted to live on the east side, no. Because they put us on the east side with all the other undesirables. So we go to the east side. And in other communities, it's the same thing. But in the 40s, it's a little bit different. See, we started World War II, and then so we start to intern Japanese. And then at that same year, down in California, at the Sleepy Lagoon, there's a murder. And it's called the Sleepy Lagoon murder. And the policing of Chicano youth, Mexican American youth, is rampant and heavy. In 1943, in July, there's a Zoot Suit riot. The first time we talk about state repression, we talk about, how these things work. It's not only the police, but for the first time, the federal government allows the United States Navy personnel, their people, to wear their work clothes, to go downtown LA with clubs and sticks, with people in uniform, and they start beating on Mexican youth. That's called the Zoot Suit riots. Okay, unprecedented. And I want to establish something as well. At all this time of repression, let us not get this twisted. There is always women involved in this repression. The brown body, the black body, yes, it's males, but don't think that it's not women. Do not ever think that women haven't been involved. And at that same time, a Zoot Suit riot, but at the same time, this is just how things work, how labor and oppression work. But they say, call back the Mexicans, because we're going to war, and we need all the people we can get, but we need someone to work in the field, so they bring in the braceros. So braceros are brought in, and if you've ever seen pictures of how they're brought in, they're spray gas, because of course we have bugs, and we're vile people. So they spray us down, and then they send us all over the Southwest. But Mark, this is just to show you about Texas. The Mexican government would not allow Braceros to go to Texas, because Texas has been so racist since before eternity that they didn't allow Braceros to go to Texas. So Braceros came here, and in that time, because I'm a farm worker, between 1947 and 1948, my family lived down the river, Sacramento County, in Arlington, California, in Farm Labor Camp. At a baptism, somebody was killed. The police came, got the body, and took off. Less than a year later, my father, who's 17 years old, is playing pool after work, because my father worked from 8 years old to 18 in the farm labor, and he's playing pool and he's drinking beer with his friends, and that's against the law, but hey, money talks and everything else walks. And there was a murder. The police came and grabbed the body and took off. There was no investigation, there was none of that. So we have to understand, in the policing of bodies, of brown and black bodies, there have been many murders that have gone unaccounted for. It's not, they kill people, especially in rural California, and they'll take you out to the countryside and they'll kill you in nada. Nobody says nothing. And the powers that be, they just go along with it, and we say, oh my God, that's not true, but there's story after story. That sent my father at 18 years old, and he told my grandfather, I'm not going to work in the fields anymore. Went to Stockton and signed up for the service. My father was in the first wave of the Korean War, the first one to shoot out a tank in the third day. In the 1950s, juvenile delinquency becomes the deal. there's all kinds of academia, there's all kinds of books, there's all kinds of trees being killed to write all these books about juvenile justice. The best practical answer we can do for juvenile delinquency is the teen center. And the teen center is born. The baile at the teen center, where the people, the different groups, the different guys, the different girls, they wore the jackets, and we'll just say the Jets and the whatever, but whatever neighborhood they were from, and they wore those jackets, and they went to the teen dances. At that same time, the policing of youth, the policing of adults, of brown bodies is intensified. It's intensified because now we have a war in the foreign lands, and now we have a war in the United States. So, in the 60s, we can go into another war, Vietnam. In Vietnam, we, brown bodies and black bodies, were disproportionately sent into the service because there was a lottery, right? You had to go, right? And so we went to the service, to Vietnam in disproportionate numbers. And also, we had the civil rights movement. And so we started to stand up. And that civil rights movement has a huge impetus as to what is happening today. Because what we're witnessing is a backlash to a civil rights movement. And you're all over 18, so I'm going to tell you something about the new Jim Crow. Okay, 1850. Today, there's more black males in prison than there were slaves in 1850. But you want to know why? Because you cannot procreate a black baby without a black penis. So if you take that black boy, that black man, and put them in the jailhouse, and I worked in the jailhouse, if you take them in the numbers that there are, there may be 50% of the population of the state black, and there's 50% black in prison. How does that work? You know, tell me that. And so by 2000, and by the 1970s, we see that backlash. There's 25,000 prisoners in the state of California, and that includes women. Again, I'm telling you, that includes women. Let's not get it twisted, But, and so then in the 1980s, we take under Duke Manchin and under Governor Wilson, we take money from public education and we build the largest, most ambitious prison project in the history of the world. And from 1980 until the turn of the century, by the turn of the century in 2000, there's 175,000 prisoners in the state of California. From 25,000 to 175,000. And we, for sure, de seguro, I read it on the Bible, all of you know this word, it's a 4-letter word, it's called gang. And that word gang is so inundated into our lives, and we swear we know what a gang is, because you see it on PBS, you see it on the Night 9 special, you see it, you know it, and you know somebody in it, and the fact of the matter is, you do know somebody in it, because in our families, good hard-working families, we start having people go to prison in numbers that we've never seen. And now everybody in this room knows somebody who's been in jail at some point in their life, and don't tell me no. Because every single one of us now, especially people of color, we know somebody who's been to jail. And then the 1990s, for brown bodies, now we're tied with immigration. Because now, not only is the brown body, the domestic brown body, gangs and farm workers and poor people, but now we're illegal. And now we cause them trouble because our numbers are growing unprecedented. There's more brown people today than there has ever been in this country. There are more youth today in the United States of America than ever in the history of this country. And in the state of California, Chicano Latinos are 10% above whites. And we're only getting bigger because back 10 years ago, the kindergarten class was decisively Latino, now it's just getting bigger. It will get bigger and bigger and bigger. But one thing the United States is great at, it's called divide and conquer. And it has us at each other, and it has people voting for trompeta, right? Oh my God, it's gonna help us and make America great again. You know, and America would be a cool place with all the beauty that it has around us. But it's too freaking racist, man. And it's too racist, and it won't let that racism go. And I think of Emmett Till, those pictures, you know, and there's new Emmett Tills, and you talked about them. You know, this is so serious for your generation. It's so serious, it's gonna affect your children, your grandchildren. I'm be long gone, and it's still gonna be happening. Don't get it twisted. We're not gonna make a capital investment in prisons and just say, okay, we're gonna let some out. Because now they're letting prisoners out to put undocumented aliens, criminals in those beds. So they don't let it go. I say in this, by now, in 2011 to end, is that the tools of repression are much deeper, much more. There's now continuation school for elementary kids, junior high school. Continuation school for elementary kids. And we say the school to prison pipeline, and I'm sorry, and I'm gonna say this right here. There are colorful teachers, administrators that are pushing our children into that system. They're pushing our children into that system. What's up with that? Because there's only so much resources. The Tower of Power said there's only so much oil in the ground, right? And what is here? You know what's really happening, and everybody's cool, but it ain't cool. And in places where I work, I do mental health in Yolo County, they send more kids to, they direct file more kids. They're like in the top 10 of the state of California. There's only 28 counties, 56 counties, 52, whatever county. They're in the top 10. There's only 250,000 human beings that live in that county with the big fat University of California there that don't help nobody, was making fat money. And so this policing of bodies has become so refined. And the words that they use, alien, illegal, gangs, and what happens, the young heads, the ones that I work with, I want to be separated myself, just like, I want to be separated. And the girls, don't get it twisted. Young women need young women to work with young women. Where are you at? And I leave you with this. Lamar Kendrick's dad. If you have not heard that, if you are not hip to Lamar Kendrick's dam, if you want to be Tupac, all eyes on me, and if you have not heard Damn by Lamar Kendrick, you need to play it 5 times, think about it, play it 5 times, think about it, and then talk about it. Because if you're not listening to that CD, it's called Truth. It's so heavy, and I'm an old man, but I know better. I know better. I listen to you guys. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Fantastic. Our last speaker is Councilmember Alan Warren. Alan Warren has been council member for over 5 years and 4 years, and he is working hard to try and bring about justice in Sacramento Police Department. And so he's going to be here to tell us about what's going on in his district, which I told you about initially. Okay, Alan, thank you for being here.
Great, Stan. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here. To all the panelists, very passionate comments and discussions. And this issue is not a particularly easy issue, but it is one that time has really come for all to engage to bring about the kind of solution that will impact all of us in a better way, and that's people of color and others, not just people of color. This is a responsibility that I believe we all have. My name is Alan Warren. I represent District 2, which is the northeastern part of the city of Sacramento. I'm born and raised in Sacramento. I went to Grand High School, grew up in Del Paso Heights. I'm a product of a big family. In fact, I'm still meeting some of my relatives, close relatives, even to this day. But I have 7 sisters, and I'm the only boy in the family. And so I was raised in a very, somewhat unusual, I guess, because I was the only boy, but a very loving, supportive family with a lot of beautiful women that protected me. My sisters are all older except for one. I have one younger sister that's 4 years. And so some people call me a very compassionate person. But I would suggest that, you know, the biggest issue or the biggest characteristic that I like to carry around is one that has a positive impact, a doer. Not a lot of words, but an action-oriented person, and always looking for a solution. And so this issue is the kind of issue that brings people to the issue a lot of times at the height of the moment, particularly when they're high-profile cases. But it's one that we really have to be very diligent on, because once the issue is brought to light, then it really becomes, what are we going to do about it? These issues that are being discussed now have long been determined to be problems. And in fact, in Sacramento, I'd asked the mayor, the former mayor, Kevin Johnson, a couple of years ago let's start some neighborhood discussions about policing and as it related to some of the other high-profile issues that were happening throughout the country. These shootings of unarmed, most of the time, African-American men. You know, so we would not have something like that happen here. And lo and behold, a year after that, we've had essentially several of those types of incidents here that have been very high profile. And unfortunately, as well, the couple of the gentlemen that were shot and killed had mental issues as well. Most recently, in the city of Sacramento, some statistics came out about stopping of people of color, primarily African-American men. I'm not sure if some of you have seen that article in the newspaper. But if you were, and if you don't know, I'll give you a little bit of the statistical background. In Sacramento, there are 8 city council districts in Sacramento. I represent District 2. Each of the council districts are about the same. But in District 2, African-American men were stopped more than 5 times more than any other district in the city. 5 times. And in fact, if you put all the other council districts together and multiplied it by 2, District 2 still had the most stops of African-American men. And in fact, I believe there's an article in the newspaper today with some additional detail. As I mentioned, the issue around violence in urban and predominantly minority communities and really how it's impacted African-American men, for me, personally, started when I was about 8 years old. And there was a very high-profile case here in Sacramento with a brother of a good friend of mine. His name was, the gentleman who was shot, name is Raymond Brewer. Most of you will be too young to know, but it was one of those kinds of incidences that really divided our city. It had people pointing fingers, it had race riots taking place, but it was essentially several African-American young men were coming from the skating rink on a Saturday night. And they were going home. Somebody, you know, as it was discussed, somebody said, stop. They didn't stop, they kept going, and furthermore, they didn't know what was going on, it was late, and so they took off, hadn't done anything. And Raymond had got shot and killed. The other young man who was with him, who I know very well now, still is very traumatized by that issue, but he picked up Raymond and carried him all the way home. and Raymond died, and it was a major, major issue, very similar to what we're seeing now in the papers going throughout the country. So we fast forward now some 40 years or so, 45 years. This gentleman, is it Ed? Eddie said he's 61, so I'm 52 years old. Thank you. So, but I say that to say I remember these incidents as like they were yesterday, because there were periods in time in my life where I was very unsettled as a young person. I didn't know really what was going on. And then as I became, I started into my puberty, my mother would say, son, you can't do this or you can't do that. You need to be careful because of people are going to see you in this society and they might respond like this or they might respond like that. And it really blew me away to think that people could treat other people that way because of their color. Now, then you pair that to immediately after, there was a movie that came out that was really the most profound thing I'd ever seen. It was called Roots. Because a lot of times you hear about stuff and it's either theory or it happened, and you really don't comprehend. But when I saw that movie Roots, it did something to my soul to see people brutalized and treated not as human beings, but as property, and not even property that was well cared for. So that is, unfortunately, it's part of our history. And it is my belief that because we've never dealt with that fully, our country has not been able to heal. Not just black folks, but also white folks. And so we have these issues now spiking up. And there seems to be, politically the right things get said, but there seems to be very little substance that's really taking place. If you look at here in Sacramento, our police force is, I think, about 2.5% black. We have not made the kind of progress that one would be led to believe. It is California, of all the states in the United States of America, California is probably the most progressive, or at least one of the most progressive. It is one of the most diverse. It is a state in which I believe that people can still achieve, in spite of all of the issues that might hold us back, we can still achieve. And yet, when you look at all the negative indicators of races or people in this country, African American men still are at the bottom in most of the indicators. Incarceration, high school dropout, unemployment, children out of wedlock, single parent households, all of those things. And again, I go back to things that have been left undone because of our history as a country. Now it becomes, at this point, what do we do about it? And one, I would suggest, and it's not easy to do, but we have to have honest dialogue with one another. Across culture, across race, you have to let other people express to you how they feel about the issue. How they really feel. And they have to trust that you're going to receive that with the kind of spirit that helps us to go forward. And it has to go both ways. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to talk about race. Me and my wife get into heated discussions about race today. And you would think that we would be able to dialogue and continue. But it is, my wife is biracial. She's Filipino and black. And so I say that to say that race is something that we paint these pretty pictures about how we're doing as a country and how we look, and we got all these brown-skinned people and all of these things that suggest that we're moving forward, and yet there's a deep vein in this country that is still not let go of the past. And that past raises its ugly head a lot of times, and you see very cruel things happening. And some of the response to those things are very cruel as well. Meaning, you brutalize me, I'm gonna brutalize you. You don't heal yourself or this country that way, but it's hard to argue against somebody that's responding to something that has been so heinous done to them or one of their family members. So I would just suggest, and I want to commend Professor Oden for bringing us and all of you together to talk about it, because I believe that the answer really lies out there with you, the young people. Some of us are not as young as some of the others. I can look in the eyes. I'm not going to look at anybody in particular, but the young people, college students, young professionals, minds that are still fertile and not warped. So at this point in my life, let me just give you a couple of things that we've worked on in the city of Sacramento, and I'll pass the mic to Professor Oden. But we're going through a transformation in the city of Sacramento in terms of how we're going to police our city. So we have, in the last year or so, we've implemented a body camera policy, and we've also initiated even though it was not followed correctly, a new ordinance whereby the video from any incidents of police brutality or police shootings has to be released within 30 days. And what that does is it sends a signal. It sends a signal to those that are hired to protect and serve and respect our community and our people. If they're not doing that the way they're supposed to, there's going to be another set of criteria that they will be judged by as well. And that's the video footage, or sometimes there's audio. So what we want to do is to move this process along. We want to weed out bad actors. We want to weed them out, and we want to embrace the good actors. And there are plenty of good police officers of all colors. And we have to acknowledge that as well, even though we acknowledge the fact that we got people out there brutalizing us, which is a real issue. In order to have credibility, we have to speak to the truth, not just when we're angry or we're mad at someone, but also when we see the things that we want replicated in our city or in our lives. We have to speak the truth, I believe, on both sides of it. Not just show up when there's a bad issue, but we also have to be present when there are positive and good things happening. Sometimes it might have police involvement, sometimes it won't. But regardless of the situation is my point. We have to call out the bad actors, and we have to support the good actors. And so we're doing the body cameras. We're promoting, and we're not there yet. We're promoting transparency. We want to build and rebuild trust back in the community between the people that the police are there to protect and serve and our police officer. And it is also my contention that if we can make people in the community feel safer and treat them in the way that they are deserving of being treated, it will make the police job easier. It will make them safer. If you have angry people that you have to police, ultimately there's going to be an eruption, and people are going to get hurt on both sides of it. And that's been proven, and I think even recently, you see police officers getting gunned down, you see people getting gunned down. People are angry, and a lot of people are afraid. And so with that, I have a few more notes, but I know we're on a time crunch there, so hopefully we get some questions.
Thank you very much, Al. All right, so Councilman Warren talked about dialogue. And dialogue is one of those things that is really going to inform ourselves, get us much more interested in what's going on. So now is the time for dialogue. So we have mics here. I'm not sure if they work or not, but if anybody has a question, comment they would like to make, now is the time. So let's just open it up.
So my name is Tanya. I'm with Black Lives Matter Sacramento. I wanted to start off just by a statement into what you said. I want to let it be known that Black Lives Matter Sacramento fought really hard for a really long time to get that ordinance passed. And we asked for a lot more than what we got. So y'all don't get credit for that because we had to fight tooth and nail and it was very difficult. And City Council is very reluctant to doing anything to make our police more transparent and more accountable. With that being said, I'm triggered right now, I'm sorry, I'm so upset. But with that being said, Councilmember Warren, you're a part of the system that enables these police to do what they do. When is the council going to be more proactive in making sure that these things don't happen? Just like you said, instead of doing things after they've happened, after the community shows up, after the community has to build coalitions with other organizations just so that we're treated with dignity and respect when we come into council chambers. When is your council going to do more things without us having to show up? And when are we going to be treated respectfully when we come into your chambers?
So, point well taken. I believe that the council too has been very reluctant to take on very difficult issues. So, I've been on the council for one term. I have gotten the reputation of being the most radical council member. So, and irrespective of what you or others might think, it doesn't just happen. You know, there is a whole set of issues, including their union contracts, things you can't have the police officers do or not because there's a legal agreement between them and the city until the contract is reopened. But we fought really hard to get body cameras and to get the video released. I was the leading proponent of that. But I will say that, you know, I don't think that you, I don't have any issue with you being upset, you know, and expressing your opinions, you know. Well, I'm telling you, I don't, and I don't. I grew up in Del Paso Heights, you know, and I've seen and experienced, you know, a lot of what others have as well, and particularly as an African-American man. So I don't make excuses for it. You know, I'm here looking for solutions and ideas. You know, I'd like that if you or others have those to offer up, then I would suggest you do that, you know. Well, and just remember, it takes 5 on the council to pass any ordinance. We have none. Well, that's part of it then. Then why don't you work on that? No. Okay.
Yes.
Stan,
Question?
Stan, can I'm sorry, sister, excuse me, I'm not gonna be long. I cringe every time I hear body cameras being uplifted as a solution. And it's not just you, council member, it's, you know, this conversation across the board. There was a study done very recently that actually body cameras increase the likelihood that a black or brown person is going to be shot by almost 4%. By almost 4%. Body cameras increase the likelihood that police are going to use lethal force. The other thing about body cameras is that they are only seen from the perspective of the officer, right? And then the third thing about them is the ability of that technology and those videos to be edited. I said that was one of the victories of ABTP, but because we were on a time crunch, I had to stop talking. All of the videos that we've gotten have been edited and counter every single eyewitness statement of the murders that are taking place in OPD. Body cameras are not the answer, and I'm gonna say it again, we cannot reform our way out of the system. It is not broken. We must abolish it and create something new, and that's a long process, and I understand it's a long process, but when are we going to start?
Hi, my name is Ebony Johnson, and I'm from the Cooper Woodson College, and I have 2 questions. Mr. Allen, what does District 2 encompass? Like what areas?
District 2 is the... District 2 is probably the most diverse district in the city of Sacramento. It is extremely diverse. It has about 22% African Americans, 25% Latinos, about 22% Caucasian and European. And so it's very diverse. It's the northeastern part of Sacramento. Arden Fair Mall, Del Paso Heights, Strawberry Manors. Right.
Okay, so my next kind of question / comments for the young lady in front about Black Lives Matter. I have a question. I respect Black Lives Matter, but my question is, does Black Lives Matter only when the police is killing us or when we're killing each other? Because I live in Oak Park, and just last week, 5 people were shot out here, 2 died, and I don't see any Black Lives Matter out in my neighborhood policing the neighborhoods. Everybody's dependent on the police. But I do understand when the Black Panthers were around, we policed our own street, and we was effective by doing that. We didn't rely so much on everybody else until it was broken up. So I don't necessarily blame Congress or the Senate or anybody that's law enforcement, because yes, most of the time their hands are tied. I do understand. I have family in politics, so I understand. But at the same time, we need to take accountabilities for ourselves. We need to look out for our own sisters and brothers and figure out what are we doing wrong to uplift our spirit and make ourselves stronger than the oppression that's out there. We can't just look to an entity and expect you guys to correct it, because it starts with us.
Absolutely. So what I would say to that is Black people typically live around Black people.
That's right.
White people typically live around white people. So when the term in and of itself, Black on Black crime, is a misnomer, because we don't walk around saying white on white crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime. We don't say Asian on Asian crime, but we say it about Black people, and that's not fair.
I say, when it's a white on white crime, I speak it, white on white crime. If it's Asian on Asian, I speak it, Asian on Asian. But
here's our solution to that, is that we've been working very diligently within the city to create a community alternatives to policing. We've gotten together and we encourage the community to come out and look at what the resources are out there so that we can police ourselves, because it is about abolishing the system and not continuing to accept the corruption of the system that already exists, right? Mm-hmm. The second part of that is that Black on Black, whatever crime within communities is systemic of the greater problem. If I had a job, if I had good education, if I had housing, if I had good health care, I wouldn't have the stressors on me to go and rob Johnny who lives next door and kill him, right? Who I'm familiar with because I know that he might not close his door, or he's the dope boy on the corner and he's vulnerable, right? So we wouldn't be attacking each other if the system wasn't so broken.
I mean, that would be acceptable.
Can I respond as well? So
Okay.
she covered a piece of it. I mean, I do have to agree with this that we have to hold. It's not about not holding ourselves accountable, but we have to have a complete analysis of what's happening in our communities, right? We also have to understand the role that the media plays in the narrative about our communities. Black people are not inherently more violent than white people. We have Black neighborhoods are not inherently more dangerous than white neighborhoods, right? The other thing I'd say, I love that you brought the example of the Panthers and what they were doing. I also want to remind this group of people who don't know about what the United States government did to the Black Panther Party, and particularly under this regime, if all of a sudden I start walking through West Oakland with my homies carrying guns and doing community security patrols, right, the backlash that's going to happen on us. And then the third thing that I will say is that we do respond to intercommunal violence constantly. My organization, my comrades, consistently. I live in Oakland. It's one of the deadliest cities, right, in the country. The media doesn't cover that. When we're out there holding vigils for Reginae, 16-year-old girl who was gunned down at a funeral, the media doesn't cover that. They don't talk about that, right? And then I guess the last thing I say is that we can't chew gum and walk at the same time, right? So just because I'm over here, my primary focus, my passion, my work is about dealing with police terror, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm not on all of the fronts, right? Also working on all of the other ways that Black people are losing their lives in this country. And then the last thing I'll say is, and I think this is true I'm a mother. I don't get paid for this work. There's only so many hours in a day. And when I walk into a Black Lives Matter meeting or an APTP meeting or a Movement Black Lives meeting, and there's 6 of us sitting in there, my question to the community, because we get this a lot, is, I don't know you, so I can't speak to what work you do in the community, but the larger question I have to my people is, where are you? Right? Because when there's more of us, we can do more work. I understand, like I said earlier, that we're trying to pay our light bills, we're trying to go our water bills, and that's why a lot of us are shifting our work from being reactionary, to what's happening, to being visionary and building things. Like I talked about the 21st Century Survival Program so that we can start to provide some relief to the people so they can be in the streets, but we need the people to be a little patient with us, and the people to give us some more of their time, right? And to stop letting what I'm just gonna say, what white folks are saying about our movement come out of our own mouths.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, do you want to speak? No. So like, is there anybody else want to speak?
I'm going to answer her because she asked me a question.
All right.
I just wanted to highlight the things that we are doing. I don't know if you follow us or, I'll wait till she's done talking. I don't know if you follow what we do, but Black Lives Matter, we try to hit things at the foundation so that these issues don't happen. And I think we pretty much covered it, but we're trying to take down the system that's killing us and rebuild a new one. And at the same time, we're fighting for Nandi Kane, we're fighting for Lorenzo Cruz, and we're fighting for Dejan Fleno, we're fighting for Adrian Led, we fought for Joseph Mann. We're trying to build a freedom school in the summer. We've got community alternatives to policing, which is a meeting that we have every single month that we highly publicize. We invite the whole community, and it's hella white people in there. We need more Black people. So if you're down to do that, please come join us, because we're doing that work and we're trying to build these systems so that, and I'm from Oak Park. I grew up in Oak Park. We've been fighting gentrification in Oak Park. We've been out there fighting it. We did surveys. We went through all the houses and there's so much work, and the media is not talking about that. So please find out what we're doing before you criticize what we're
Well,
doing.
I'm out there every day. I'm born and raised, and I'm one of the statistics that you spoke about as you know, growing up hard, not having this, not having that. But I'm not gonna hurt somebody else just so I can get ahead. I mean, if I gave you my life story, you wouldn't even believe why I'm even here or how I'm here. So it's hard for me to accept that because a Black man feels he's so broken, he has to hurt his brother or his neighbor. That's what it's hard. That doesn't resonate with me very well because I speak that myself. I'm raising 4 kids, 2 of them boys, 2 of them girls. This is my oldest son, 17, be 18. I'm bringing him here to let him know there's alternatives than to be out there in the street trying to hustle and gangbang and rape and kill and beat your brother or your sister or your neighbor. You know, and if I can do it, everybody else who had the struggle I had could do the same
A
thing.
lot of people are doing it.
Okay?
A lot of people are surviving. A lot of people
Right.
have been in prison, got out, got jobs.
Right.
A lot of what you're hearing, it's just like if people across the world think we're the Tea Party, that the whole country is the Tea Party, that we're all Donald Trump, because that's what they see on the news. So there's a lot of success stories that come out of Black people.
Right.
There's a lot of Black success. There's a lot of, especially in this work, you meet people in the community that are healing others because of their experiences.
Right.
So those things are vital. If you've had those experiences, then we need you in the community. You're a vital source to the community.
Questions, other questions or comments anybody has?
I had one.
Go.
So my original question was, I try to be as active as I can because I feel like, especially like with incarceration, it's so targeted to Black men. And so I'm always looking for ways to help, I guess, because obviously I can't know what somebody who's Black has been going through, because just by default, I'm white, I'm a woman, and people don't look at me like they look at you when you're driving down the street, just for example. So my original question was like, what support do you feel like you could tell me so that I can take that and have that conversation? While I was thinking about that question, I missed your name, I'm sorry. Right there. You said that there were hella white people at the movements.
Community.
Well, the community alternatives and whatnot, and I see what your frustration is or whatever, as far as that's being,
Mm-hmm. You can
more of your cohort should be there
Right.
over white people. But at the same time, you want to change the conversation, you want to get people to understand where you're coming from and, advocate, I guess, in any way you can. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I just don't know what else. I don't know why it would be a negative narrative or whatnot to have people there. I'm just wondering, because I do want to know how can I help, but at the same time, I don't want to seem like I'm stepping on toes and later on it being hella white people are these.
So a couple of things, right? Everybody breathe. It's a couple of things though, right? The first thing is, I'm gonna actually go in the order of your questions, right? The first thing is that there are groups. So the way that I usually say that, people sometimes say, look, go get your cousins, right? Like what we need white people to do more than anything else on the planet is to go talk to other white people. Because quite honestly, as a black person, I'm tired of having conversations with other white people about my oppression, and quite frankly, that's not my job. So if you're an ally, go get your cousins, right? That's first. And there's groups with which you can do that. The big one, I don't know if you all have them up here, showing up for racial justice. They have meetings, they have good politics about what it means to be a good ally, they do trainings about what it means to be a good ally, and then and there's organizations that work with that model. So for instance, the same thing, for the same reasons that I pointed out earlier, that for our people, for black people, because of all of the other boulders that we're carrying on our backs, and because of the decimation of black resistance that was done intentionally and systematically by this country and the hopelessness that left behind, we are in a process of reigniting, right, resistance in our community. So it's taken us a minute to get there, and so we do ABTP meetings. We got a lot of white people there, but remember I started the conversation saying we're black-led? So we got white people that gotta go deal with SIRS, gotta understand what it means to be a white ally, and then they gotta come in and do what they're told, right? So their analysis about what we should do or how we should be doing it or what black liberation looks like through the views of a white lens is irrelevant to anything we're trying to do, right? And then the third thing, and I'm gonna say this gently, is Sister Tanya was responding specifically to the other sister in the back about black engagement, right? And she was putting a call out to black people to come engage. Somehow you managed to turn that into something that was about you. And it wasn't about you, right? She was a black woman talking to another black woman about wanting black people, and what she was talking about was her lived experience in this meeting. She did not say, there's hella white people in this meeting and that's a problem. She didn't say, there's hella white people in this meeting and I don't want to look at white people. She didn't say, there's hella white people in here and I don't want to work with white people. All she did was make an observation about the fact that there are more allies showing up than there are impacted people, and being really clear that we need the impacted people to be at the forefront of that movement. And so I would just suggest, as you're coming into spaces and you want to engage with black people, that you check those thought processes, right? And it's an indicator of the privilege with which white people walk through this world.
I just want to add to what Sister Kat had just said. Again, to just understand that we're talking about anti-blackness, right? Largely from a colonized mindset. And so we first have to decolonize our mindset when we talk about anti-blackness and even anti-brownness. And a lot of these spaces cannot be used to discuss whiteness or white privilege or white explanations and understandings, because you are automatically taking up the space and taking away from what the issue is when we use this space to have to say this is what and this is how, when all of us have access to looking up and understanding and learning on our own. We have to be mindful of that. And we cannot assume to say that there's so many people here. Please educate the privileged folks on how not to be privileged. We have to understand that we're not saying that nobody is needed that's not black. We're saying that anti-blackness is the part of the problem, and we need to understand that we can't use these spaces to create white dominant understanding of anti-blackness.
That white dominant understanding is in everything that we do. So when you go to school, it's white dominated. The history books don't teach you about loving blackness or even that black history. It doesn't give an accurate depiction of slavery, Jim Crow. It doesn't give an accurate depiction of the civil rights movement. So it's because there's been an exclusion of blackness within the history of this country, and it's from the beginning of this country that blackness has been a part of it, that white privilege has to be recognized, accepted, right? And in accepting that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because you didn't wake up, anyone who's white here didn't wake up and say, oh, thank you God I have white privilege. But at the same time, you better be thanking God you got white privilege, if that makes sense.
And of course, it's possible to take courses from myself, from Dr. Barajas, from Dr. Moore, from Dr. Brown, and you'll be hearing a different narrative around race in this country, around white privilege, around history of oppression in this country. So we feel free to take other courses and get that education. Yes, sir.
Well, I have some comments. Well, first of all, I want to recognize that people that they lived here before we did. We're close to the river, Miwok, Maidu Nation. So like, I like to start that when we start off, because we got to know where we're at. We're visitors here, So after that, I want to thank all the elders that are here. Just the fact that you're here, you're survivors of how fucked up it is out there, So all the veteranos right here,
Thank you.
all the elders right here, so respeto to you all, all the work you all done. Thank you. And one of the questions I got is, I started solidarity with prison abolitionists and criminal justice abolitionists, and it's so, and I know there's going to be a future for maybe not a criminal justice system, but maybe a rehabilitation and justice system. But what do y'all see that looking like? And I know that cameras are not going to help, and I'm not trying to pick on you either, just the fact that you're here, you're a survivor too, So I guess the question, what would a prison in the future look like? Or not even a prison, a rehabilitation system and a justice system, and not only a rehabilitation system for victims, but also for those who committed who victimized someone.
One thing, as the sisters have said, the system doesn't work. I could have been retired fat from the youth authority. I had to leave. It was so violent and set up to be violent. The thing is that the system has to be abolished. It has to start new. What does that look like? I don't know. I have ideas, I'm sure they have ideas, but really it's on you youngsters, And one thing that I want to say is that we need to go back to local community organizing to get people on the same page, or at least have the dialogue to start getting involved in these organizations. Because without that dialogue at the local level, in the neighborhoods, because that was the power of civil rights, not what you see on Eyes of the Prize, but what you see in the neighborhoods, and that was the impetus of the Panthers and the Brown Berets and AIM and all those other organizations, was at the very local level. When you get the moms talking to each other, when you get the dads talking to each other, then they talk to the kids, and then the kids start talking to each other, then you have something. But right now, it's like people are pushing so hard, but there's still a disjoint. And it's not our fault that there's a disjoint. That was on purpose. Because the civil rights, and make no bones about it, the civil rights were led by black people. That's the truth. But the lady left, and I want to tell her, but see, the true freedom fighters for the whites were the hippies. Because the hippies they bring us organic food, they bring us, and we think that that's nothing. They were the first ones, the first whites to say, we're not the original inhabitants. Christopher Columbus and George Washington, that ain't nothing. It's the native peoples, and it's not by any type of happenstance that Leonard Peltier has not been let out. And Mamiya's not going to be let out. And why? But they say, and the thing is that this system is calculated. This system is, capitalism ain't no joke. It has messed our minds up. Oof. It's done to us some dirtiness. That's why I said about divide and conquer. It got us all looking at each other. Well, wait a minute, I don't know, they're too radical. No, I want to be like this. No, man, we suffer from mental illness big time in this country. All of us.
I agree with that.
I want to add two other things, because I think one of them is part of this restructure of the system. And that's, folks in my district have come up with a a plan called Neighborhood Council. And what that is intended to do is led by a lawyer who was a public defender, grew up in the neighborhood, and he has gone to the district attorney to get the district attorney to allow certain crimes to be handled on the neighborhood level. So everything wouldn't be heard by a judge or heard by, in a courtroom. This would be things that could be settled in the neighborhood. And a lot of times, young people, even older people, they get tagged with, maybe a misdemeanor or some other type of minor offense, and then it elevates up. So if the police officer does stop you, they pull up something, they have more probable cause to either search or look and perpetuate the issue. But the last point I want to make is that, some years ago I worked as ironically as a community organizer. And I worked in an organization that was started by a gentleman named Sal Alinsky. I don't know if you know who Sal is, but we did a lot of things. I was in my early 20s at that time. And one of the principles in that was that there were no permanent enemies or no permanent friends. And what that meant was that people, and I've seen it happen in my life, where people can start off being an adversary and they turn out to be one of your biggest champions. And so what I would just suggest, this may not apply in all cases, but you have to be open, because there are people, throughout history and time that may be the same neighborhood, maybe same race, maybe same sex, that will do things that will help you, but oftentimes there will be some obscure person that will do something that will make a very, very dramatic impact on the outcome. And you can look back through history, I can note some things, but I would just say that and people can change as well. And so I'm an optimist. I believe, that things can get better. I'm going to do what I can to help make things better. But you have to be open as well. If you're closed, then I think you shut yourself off to over half of the solutions that can come to you by way of other people.
Couple things. One is the phrase that we use is radical reform on the way to revolution, right? So we're not so crazy. I'm not so crazy. So for instance, a lot of folks like to run around saying, don't call the police ever, like right now. I live in a neighborhood where people get shot in broad daylight outside my window, right? And I happen to have a security team that I can call. I haven't called the police, and I've lost count of how many years, right? But that's because I've had the privilege of building a base of people that are trained to engage with me and my family in a particular sort of way. I can't have that same conversation with my 70-year-old neighbor, Miss Faye, right? Until the community has managed to build a similar system for her, right? We can't say, get rid of this without building something. The frustration in this, and we've got to be where the people are. Right now, the masses, right, still believe in the lie of that America can, at some point, if we tinker with it enough, work for them, right? They have been lulled into that fallacy. So we have to go where the people are at. We have to utilize systems, like city council, right? Like the mayor, when they don't do what it is that they say they're going to do, to be able to highlight that for the masses. And while we're highlighting that, present them with viable alternatives. It's going to be a long process. Revolution and struggle is protracted, right? I mean, nothing that happens overnight. And like I was saying earlier, we have to start now. We have to figure out where are the places we can safely and responsibly divest from this system that has never and will never have any intention of being our friend, right? So for me, I know that quote, no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, and that's good organizing strategy. But the United States government of America will always be my permanent enemy. Let me be really clear. They've been waging war on my black ass because they kidnapped me and brought me here in the first place. They've been waging war on indigenous people since they came and stole that land. They have never stopped. They will never stop. In fact, the very financial foundation of this country is dependent on the enslavement, the persecution, the incarceration, and the murder of black, brown, and indigenous bodies. So they were forever going to be my permanent enemy. And my work and the work of my comrades Let's figure out how we dismantle that system piece by piece, but we can't sell pipe dreams to the masses. We have to say, okay, we understand this crime in the community. Here's this alternative. Call these brothers, right? And the brothers and sisters go into that community, they build relationships with the folks, right? They figure out how to handle intercommunal beef. And then we have to have these conversations. I love that you asked that question. What would that look like, right? I have to spend time living in that space, because if I can't see something different, right, I'm not going to be able to get up in the morning, right? But I tell you one thing it does look like. It looks like black men at home with black women procreating, right? It looks like children in black and brown and indigenous schools, right, learning real education, right? Not that their history started on a goddamn slave ship, right? It looks like occupying armies being removed out of my community permanently. It looks like elders being trained in restorative justice so that they can settle intercommunal beef, right? It looks like perpetrator and victim coming together to have conversations. It looks like these black and brown and indigenous people that are committing violence getting the psychological and emotional support they need after being traumatized by the beast of white supremacy for 500-600 years, right? Those are the pieces of it. Now, what that all looks like, I don't know, right? I'm not a messiah, but I do know that our every single day work has to be about building that. We have to stop talking about, oh, it would be nice if, right? And we have to move from protests and marches to organizing, to move from protests and organizing to building these things in our communities, tweaking it, culling the data, and replicating it across the country. And in that process, we have to be ready to defend ourselves when they come for us, because the second we start to succeed at divestment from them and investment in ourselves, they are coming for us. So when I talk about black self-determined communities, they say, well, where is that going to be? I don't know, right? I don't know that it will be here, right? The biggest military force in the world. We can't beat them that way, right? And they don't want us living successful, thriving lives. So those are the conversations in the work, I think.
All right, one more question, please.
Okay, so I have a question that, been wondering that I believe your name's Eddie.
Yeah.
You said that it was up to the young people. And my question is, how can the young people engage other young people? Because just with the Black Lives Matter, like she said, it's hella white people there. And then I have people that I'm close to, and I say I'm going to a Black Lives Matter event. They ask me why am I going, that's stupid. And I didn't understand, but now I kind of do, because they're disgusted by what's going on and what they see. And so I guess my question is, how can I kind of like spark up or highlight something in their brain? I mean, cause I know, like you told her, like you gotta go out there and get your own research, because just listening to this panel, this makes me want to go out and research and do my own thing too as well. But without them even having the opportunity for a space like this, or the opportunity to even speak to someone as educated as you guys are, how can I myself, who still in the transition of learning more, how can I highlight in those lives who just become normalized or disgusted and just don't care, or just don't have the initiative to even go to a rally or go to a discussion or to even discuss it, period.
I think that people are numb. I think we're walking around so broken that we don't know how to even articulate what that pain looks like. I can just make it, I know me better than I know anybody on the face of the earth. You know you better than anybody knows you, right? I can't walk that walk for somebody else, but what I can do is show them actions, right? Because words are nothing. People get on, I call people all the time that they are on social media as gangsters.
Speak.
And they don't show up. They don't do anything. So you are your biggest ally to those people who don't see it. So when they see you acting and when they see change happening, then people become bandwagoners, right? Who you said go get your cousins, right? It starts with you. That's where it starts. You are the center of everything. You are the center of your world, and it trickles out. All of us have, imagine that ripple. If everybody threw a rock at the same time, and what would that ripple look like? What would that effect look like if all those waters begin to collide and you'd be like, oh, I bumped into you, and I'm sorry. What would that look like? We have to change. That's what action looks like.
And I want to just say something to you. Don't get it twisted because you're a leader. And I don't know if you understand, if you see yourself as that, because a young woman of your age to ask that question, come on. And you will impact your peers. But you too, as you said, you too have to learn and heal yourself and get your eyes clear to what's happening. Because it's not an easy thing. It's a protracted thing, and it's a personal thing, and we keep on losing our friends to the streets, to drugs, to all kinds of craziness, but you can't give up. You know, and you can't give up. And the thing is that you're being here, these are steps. So, from this group, you need to talk to one of your friends. You bring your cousins. Bring your cousins.
All right, we're gonna have to end this. It's 5 o'clock. Let's give a hand to our panelists.